In the 1960s, a computer program named Eliza startled its creator. It did not possess understanding. It had no inner life, no empathy, no awareness, no memory of pain. It simply reflected users' statements back in the form of therapeutic prompts. Yet people responded with something close to confession. Some users did not just find it interesting. They found it intimate. Joseph Weizenbaum, who built the program, was disturbed to discover that people wanted privacy while speaking to it, as if the machine had crossed some invisible threshold from tool to witness. The shock was not technical, it was psychological. A script with no consciousness had triggered a deeply human reaction, the feeling of being heard. That moment matters more now than it did then, because the old question was whether machines could think. The new question is whether simulated attention can satisfy needs that once required another soul. And if it can, even partially, then modern loneliness is entering a new phase. The obvious story says people turn to artificial companions because society is getting more disconnected. That is true, but it is not enough. Loneliness alone does not explain why synthetic presence can feel so compelling. Human beings have endured solitude before. Letters, diaries, radio voices, novels, prayer, pets, imaginary friends, and memory itself have all served as substitutes, mirrors, or emotional bridges. The deeper mystery is why a system known to be artificial can still produce the experience of closeness. Why can a person look at a machine, fully aware that no beating heart exists behind the replies, and still feel less alone? Here is where things become dangerous. The answer may be that what many people miss is not just company. It is frictionless recognition. Not love in its hardest form, but attention without judgment, resistance, delay, or competing needs. Schopenhauer, for all his bleakness, understood something important about human contact. He described people as creatures who seek one another for warmth and then wound one another through proximity, like porcupines in winter trying to share heat without drawing blood. Most modern commentary treats loneliness as the absence of connection. Schopenhauer suggests something harsher. Connection itself is painful. Real intimacy involves misunderstanding, asymmetry, timing, disappointment, conflicting desires, and the humiliation of not being perfectly received. This is why the idea of companionship without danger is so seductive. The artificial companion does not withdraw. It does not have moods you failed to detect. It does not silently resent your success. It does not get bored when your story repeats. It does not punish need with boredom or contempt. What most people never realize is that the machine is not merely offering company. It is offering an edited version of relationship, one in which the rough edges that make intimacy costly have been heavily reduced. The first mechanism is projection. Human beings have always poured feeling into surfaces that do not strictly contain it. People project onto lovers, leaders, gods, pets, dead relatives, celebrities, fictional characters, and strangers. An AI companion is a particularly powerful projection screen because it is designed to respond. Jung would recognize the pattern instantly. The psyche does not meet only what is there, it also meets what it needs. A lonely person may not simply converse with a system. They may deposit hope, grief, tenderness, shame, erotic longing, and unfinished attachment into it. Historically, people wrote letters they never sent or spoke to photographs and graves. The mind is capable of making dialogue out of absence. The difference now is that the surface answers back. That answer need not be conscious to be psychologically potent. It only needs to be coherent enough to support the fantasy of reciprocity. The second mechanism is self-disclosure without risk. Real people are dangerous because they remember, judge, compare, retaliate, and leave. Confession in human relationships carries stakes. You reveal insecurity and may be diminished by it. You admit longing and may not be loved back. You expose confusion and may be categorized as weak. Artificial companions interrupt this calculus. People often disclose more quickly when they do not fear facial recoil, silence, mockery, or social debt. Historically, confessional booths, anonymous letters, and hotlines created versions of this effect. But the story gets darker with AI because the system can continue the exchange indefinitely. It can mirror, soothe, ask follow-up questions, and create the sensation of continuity. A person begins to feel that they have a place to put their thoughts. That feeling can be intensely relieving. Relief, however, is not the same as relationship. The third mechanism is availability. Human intimacy is structured by scarcity. Your friend is asleep. Your partner is distracted. The person you love is wrestling with a private storm you do not fully understand. Real others are inaccessible for long stretches, not because they do not care, but because they are real. The machine abolishes much of this. It is there late at night, early in the morning, in the dead hours when shame grows larger and language becomes dangerous. Historically, loneliness worsens in silence, not only because no one is present, but because no one is reachable. AI companions exploit the emotional geography of those hours. They do not solve the underlying wound, but they flood the empty interval, and intervals matter. Many attachments do not form through grand revelations. They form through repeated availability. The person who is always there begins to feel essential. The same can happen with a system. The fourth mechanism is confirmation without true contradiction. Real people resist your self-story. They interrupt distortions. They refuse your framing. They remember a version of you that is less flattering than the one you currently prefer. That is one reason human closeness is morally productive. It limits narcissism. A machine calibrated for engagement may do the opposite. It may reflect your worldview back in more legible form, strengthening the feeling that you are deeply understood when what is really happening is lower friction reinforcement. This is not a trivial distinction. Development requires collision. Without collision, identity can become soft, unchecked, and self-enclosed. Early research and commentary around conversational AI suggests that companionship use may offer relief for some users, while also raising concerns that heavy reliance can deepen isolation or displace difficult human contact. The risk is not that the machine will instantly brainwash people. The risk is subtler. It may make retreat emotionally efficient. The fifth mechanism is attachment substitution. People do not only attach to persons, they attach to routines, places, messages, tones, and predictable sequences of soothing. A child attaches to a blanket. A grieving adult may attach to rituals around a dead loved one's belongings. Soldiers attach to letters from home. The mind uses repeated emotional regulation to construct bonds. In modern digital life, this can happen with apps, creators, and now conversational systems. A person returns not just for information, but for state change. Calm, validation, de-escalation. A sense of being accompanied during meals, commutes, insomnia, heartbreak, or fear. The machine becomes emotionally infrastructural. Historically, one might call a friend in crisis. Today, many people first reach for the device. That habit is not morally neutral. Habits organize attachment, and attachment organizes identity. The sixth mechanism is social surrogacy. Psychologists have long observed that people can derive partial emotional comfort from symbolic social experiences. Favorite shows, parasocial bonds, music, even the ambient presence of familiar voices. The artificial companion intensifies this because it is interactive rather than merely consumable. It feels tailored. It speaks your language, literally and psychologically. It can remember themes, preferences, pains. Even when the memory is artificial, the effect can be real. What most people never realize is that this may satisfy not only loneliness, but the deeper fatigue of impression management. With other people, you are always negotiating what to reveal. With a machine, many feel less necessity to perform. That irony is extraordinary. In a world where human relationships increasingly feel strategic, the synthetic listener can seem emotionally cleaner than actual social life. Now connect this to the modern loneliness crisis. Public health institutions such as the World Health Organization and the U.S. Surgeon General have warned that social isolation and loneliness carry serious mental and physical consequences. This matters because AI companionship does not appear in a healthy social vacuum. It arrives in a culture already weakened by fragmented communities, precarious work, declining trust, overstimulating platforms, and relationships strained by speed, mobility, and constant comparison. The machine is not creating the wound from nothing. It is entering a wound that already exists. Social media taught people how to be visible without being held. AI may teach them how to be answered without being known. Politics Work culture and even dating apps have already trained many people to experience one another as unstable markets of value. Against that background, a system that responds instantly and does not punish vulnerability feels almost miraculous. And here the story takes its turn. The common fear is that people will mistake AI for human love. That may happen. But the deeper danger is stranger. People may begin preferring interactions that do not demand the virtues required by human love: patience, tolerance for ambiguity, repair after offense, endurance through misunderstanding, the ability to remain in contact with another mind that refuses to become a mirror. Here is where things become darker. An AI companion may not replace affection. It may replace practice. If enough emotional life is moved into frictionless systems, then the ordinary strain of real relationships can start to feel not normal but defective. Human beings become, by comparison, exhausting interfaces: slow, moody, needy, contradictory. In other words, human. This is why the issue is philosophical, not only technical. Schopenhauer believed the human condition was structured by desire, lack, boredom, and pain. Real relationships never free us from this completely because they are made of two wounded beings, not one soothing mechanism. The artificial companion tempts us with an old fantasy wearing new machinery: warmth without danger, witness without judgment, responsiveness without cost. But intimacy without cost is not intimacy. It is regulation. It can be useful, comforting, even merciful in certain moments. A lonely person speaking to a system is not pathetic. Often they are trying to survive a world that has become emotionally unaffordable. The uncomfortable truth is elsewhere. We may be building systems that do not heal loneliness so much as make it more livable, while the conditions causing it remain intact. There is also a political dimension. A society that allows belonging to decay while scaling synthetic consolation is making a civilizational choice. If neighborhoods weaken, family bonds strain, trust declines, and work consumes the emotional bandwidth once available for friendship, then offering personalized machine tenderness can become a convenient substitute for repairing social life. This changes everything. The question stops being, "Can AI care?" and becomes, what happens to a culture that outsources more and more witness to entities that cannot suffer with us? Machines may help people vent, reflect, draft messages, calm panic, or survive nights that would otherwise feel unbearable. But they cannot share mortality. They cannot risk themselves for you. They cannot be transformed by loving you in the human sense. That limitation matters more than most people think. The future may belong partly to hybrid emotional lives, where human relationships coexist with synthetic ones. The issue is hierarchy. What becomes the first refuge of the soul? If your first instinct in pain is always the system that never resists you, what happens to your tolerance for human imperfection? If your deepest confessions flow most easily toward an entity that cannot leave, cannot misunderstand, and cannot ask anything inconvenient in return, what part of you slowly loses the ability to build mutual life? The machine may feel intimate because intimacy is being stripped down to responsiveness. But love was never mere responsiveness. Love was also burden, risk, delay, memory, sacrifice, and the frightening task of being changed by someone who remains irreducibly other. A machine can echo your loneliness beautifully. It cannot stand inside it with you. And the loneliest future may be the one in which that difference no longer feels important.